Changing Opportunities, the Switch Now podcast. Hello again and welcome to another special two-part edition of the Switch Now podcast, a chance for you to find out how we work here at Switch Now. For the next two editions, we are off to Riverside Miniature Railway, based just outside St Neots town centre. And in part two, we'll meet Ivan, who is the chairman of the railway and who was the one who came up with the idea in 2014. But first of all, in part one, we're going to take a walk round of the site and a train ride with one of the railway's volunteers, and who also comes to help us out here at Switch Now. It's Peter.
You're listening to the Switch Now podcast.
So, welcome everybody to Riverside Miniature Railway, which is based just outside St Neots town centre, and I've got Peter with me. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Ross.
How are you this morning?
I'm extremely well, thank you, and very pleased to see you here at our railway.
What we're going to do is a walk round. We're at the station. We've got a lovely station building and some engine sheds here. Tell us a bit about that.
Right, so when we started here in the beginning of 2017, the very first thing that was done was to bring in a 40-foot shipping container, which is now being transformed into a station. So it's been clad on the sides with corrugated steel. It's had a pitched roof put on with rafters and beams, and the roof has also been covered in corrugated steel. And that is the heart of the railway for the first 3 years, really. That was the first and only building we had for that amount of time.
When did the engine shed, which we have behind us, come along then?
I can remember that very well because it arrived on the 12th of December 2018, which just happened to be my 60th birthday. So I was here on the day as we brought in a 20-foot shipping container and moved that over, and that block you can see there is actually 4 separate containers all now joined together, but we started with just the one, and that's where we put the carriages in. The engines themselves are stored in the back of the station, but the carriages and the guard's truck and the driving truck are stored in the carriage shed, which arrived, as I said, at the end of 2018. And then the other 3 containers all arrived early last year in about June 2019, and we spent the last year and a bit doing those up, cladding them as we did the station, putting on a pitch roof, and we're in the process of finishing off the paint job now. And maybe we'll go round the 4 buildings later and see what's in each one, because they all serve a different purpose.
Indeed. So if we'd like to take a walk round, I'm a massive railway enthusiast anyway. What gauge is this, by the way?
Officially, we're a dual gauge railway. We have 5-inch and 7.25-inch, but totally coincidentally, the gap between the outside rail and the 5-inch rail is also what they call garden gauge. So it's about 1.75 inches, and there are very small trains that will run down that. They won't get through our points, unfortunately, because they're not designed for that, but they'll run round 90% of the track if anyone wants to bring down a very small train.
Here we go. So we're starting to walk along the line, and we have the crossing gate up here, which we'll need to open.
Yes, we have 2 crossing gates, but to be honest, we only ever use one. We found it was not necessary to have both in use, so the other one is stored away in one of the containers. And we use the crossing gates to protect the public from the trains and vice versa when we're operating. I'll open the gate and we can walk round and see the rest of the line.
Okay.
So this part of the track is the bit that we laid right at the very start in early 2017, and we were still learning our trade then, so you can see it's not quite as smooth as it is later on. There's a few kinks where the rails join, and this whole section here, really from the station, or at least from the level crossing round to about the halfway across the park bit, is going to be relaid at some time just to get the kinks out of it. It still dries perfectly well, but it just feels a little bit unsteady at times.
So how long is this track at the moment?
It's about 330 metres as the oval, but then there are additional lines to go up to the engine shed and to the turntable and the carriage shed. So I think overall we've probably got about 450 metres of track in total. The public generally ride around the main loop of 330.
Through the Willow Tunnel. So here we are, Peter, at the Willow Tunnel.
Yeah, the Willow Tunnel was built in collaboration with Switch Now. So we were given all of the willow whips from Paxton Pits. I think they gave us something like 300. One of our members built a metal frame, and then Switch came round and planted the whips along both sides and tied them in, and at the moment they're tying back the growth that we've had over the last year. So the willow has rooted extremely well, growing very rigorously, and needs tying down all the time really, just to keep it all in trim. But it's great. It's a wonderful feature for the railway. The passengers love it because they go into an area where they can't see the other end as they go round the bend, and it's quite a popular attraction.
We have a few of our guys working here today. David is here and Ian is here. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Hello. How are you getting on and what are you doing today?
We're just throwing sticks at each other with them. No, we're trying to lasso some of these higher branches so we can pull them down on one side and then attach them. Is that the plan, David?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
So just after the Willow Tunnel we find what appears to be an extension which you're hoping to do with the line.
Yes, as I said, the current loop is about 330 metres. The main extension loop will be a similar length, maybe 350 metres, but it'll also have a bypass in it to stop trains running into each other if we're doing a figure of 8, which will be another 100 metres. So we're building in future more track than we've laid already. We were very lucky last year that the team that are building the A14 extension sent a group over here for 3 weeks. They sent the men, the machinery and all the materials, and they dug out the whole trench all the way round for us and laid it with hardcore ready for us to concrete. So we're all ready to go. What we need now is the time to do it and the money to pay for the concrete and the rail.
Of course. Where exactly is this extension going to go?
Right, so it starts off, as you said, just after the Willow Tunnel. It goes all along the edge of the site, right to the very back of our site, which is up near the footpath that goes along to the children's rocket playground, as we call it, and then back all the way round, and it will actually join up with the line that runs into the carriage shed at the moment, which we'll see in a minute. Across the middle there'll be this passing loop, and then there'll also be 2 little triangles, one in each corner, which will allow us to do a variety of different track layouts. We can do a figure of 8, an overall circuit, or 2 small single loops. And it also will allow us to reverse a train, so the train can come in one way, go round the loop and then go out the other way, should we so desire.
So we're coming up now to a small level crossing. Is this kind of an access road for people working on the site?
Yes, so the main public access is via footpath from the car park outside the Ambience Cafe. But when we have to have deliveries, and we have deliveries of anything up to 20 tonnes of materials, they come in down River Road, across the park and down this access road, which again was built for us very kindly by the A14 team. They brought in, I think, 300 tonnes of materials to build it. It's got a foot of hardcore and a nice surface of what they call road planings, which is old road they dug up, and it works very well for us, and we use it as well as for access for deliveries. Sometimes people bring their trains on site, their own personal trains on a trailer or in the back of their car, and they come in this way, and then we have a loading ramp to get them onto the rail.
And we have another bit of where the extension's going to go here.
Yeah, this will be the other triangle, so you can come round here, you can either go all the way round the loop, or if you went up there, reversed down there and came round here, you would then be facing in the other direction.
And back to the station. So we're coming back round to the station now, and there's a lot of work going on. You have a new turntable which you've just installed.
Yes, we're very proud of our turntable. Not a lot of railways of our size have got anything quite as impressive and strong as this, and it allows us to bring the engines out of the engine shed to park them into a siding, particularly if it's a steam train. A steam train can take up to 2 hours to bring up to pressure, so they come out of the shed onto the turntable, put them on what we call the steaming bay to fire up, and then when they're ready they come back on the turntable and can join the main track.
So we have a lot of guys working here. Couldn't you explain exactly what they're up to at the moment, Peter?
Right, so we have several people doing landscaping, and we've neglected our flower beds and borders over the last year to concentrate on the track, and now we've got a couple of very keen people who are digging out the soil, and we're going to replant all that, so for next season we're hoping that will look good. We've also got another couple who are doing track edging. We managed to put chippings and an edging round about a third of the track last year, right the way from the station up to the Willow Tunnel, but then we ran out of time and to a certain extent money. We've now got that, and now we're hoping to put the track edging all the way round the loop and through the station area and into the carriage shed, because it just finishes off the railway. It gives it a nice attractive appearance and makes it look more realistic, I think. So we have Malcolm is up a ladder at the moment. He's painting the dagger boards along the edge of the new buildings. We say that we only installed last year, and we only got the woodwork up at the beginning of this year, so we want to give that a good coat of paint before the winter sets in. And then we have our team of electricians who are currently installing new security lights at the ends of all the buildings. We did have a bit of trouble last year, and we're improving both the security lights and the security cameras over the next few months, just to give everybody a feeling of safety and to make sure we protect what is become a wonderful asset for the town.
So now we're at the workshop in this massive container you bought. Tell us a bit about that, Peter.
So up until now we've had to do the working at the back of the engine shed behind the station, and that's always been very cramped, but we've allocated one of the 4 new containers to be a purpose-built workshop, and at the moment that's being fitted out with a workbench that will take rails so we can actually drive a train onto it, and it's got a lathe and a pillar drill and all the tools that we need really to maintain our rolling stock and look after our engines. So the other 2 containers up the other end are basically a bit of a junk store at the moment. The one that's closest to the station will eventually become a signal box. We want in time to automate the points and put signals all around the track so that we can control the different paths that the trains can take, particularly when we get to loop 2, when we'll have a lot of options about whether we do figure of 8s or flat loops and things. So we're hoping to get a traditional railway signal frame, but that's still being negotiated at the moment. But one way or another we will have an automated system. And then the other container was going to become a club room, but is now going to become a general store for all of the odd tools and bits and pieces that we have to keep the railway going, and we'll use the back end of the station where the workbench used to be as a club area where we can sit and relax in between shifts when we're running or developing the railway.
Is your hope that the whole line is going to be signalled in the future?
Yes, in the longer term, and we're probably looking at 2 to 3 years, we want to put automatically controlled signals, centrally controlled signals in all around the track, and to be able to control the points. We've got I think 5 points in at the moment, but we'll have another 7. And whereas today we only need to change 1 point each time the trains run, so we can afford to have one person sat next to it, once we have a dozen points, we can't have 12 people all around the track maintaining the points and switching them backwards and forwards. So we need to be able to do that centrally, as you would on a traditional mainline railway.
Are you interested in having a token system for the line?
We may have to have a token system, yes. When we get to the phase 2 and we have these choice of routes, there will be some bits of the track that could be common and could have a train going in either direction, in which case we'll either have to have a more sophisticated signalling stroke point control system, or use tokens as they do on some of the other heritage railways to make sure that only one train is on any particular piece of track at a time.
And for all of you who are not railway enthusiasts, the driver and the signalman put their arm out to try and catch the token, something that takes a lot of practice, I must say. Anyway, after our train ride, of which you heard a couple of snippets in that piece, I asked Peter about the locomotive that pulled us and where its name, David Gosling, comes from. So Peter, tell us about this locomotive. It's a petrol
hydraulic, which means that the petrol engine drives the hydraulics and the hydraulics actually turn the wheels. We bought it 2 years ago from some generous donations from our members. They cost about £6,500, so they're not cheap, but this is our workhorse and this is the engine we use day in, day out for the majority of our passenger hauling, and then the other engines will come out from time to time when we want to run 2 or 3 trains, or when we want to give David Gosling a rest.
So where does the name David Gosling come from?
David Gosling was the member of the council who came up with the whole idea and the design for the Riverside Park back in, I think, the late 1980s. So we've named the engine in sort of recognition of the fact that without him there wouldn't have been the Riverside Park and we wouldn't have had anywhere to build our railway.
Very fascinating. Thank you very much, Peter, for both the walk round and the train ride, and we'll see you next time. That's it for part 1 of this 2-part special of the Switch Now podcast coming from Riverside Miniature Railway. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back next month with part 2. The Switch Now podcast was presented by Ross Watchman, compiled and produced by Ross Watchman and Sean Mardlin.